my tarot friends, Justin Michael, welcome back to my channel, and of course welcome if it's your first time visiting. I appreciate you stopping by as always. I want to do a review and a walkthrough of a deck and a book that was sent to me for a review from Llewelyn. It was very kind for them to send that, and I appreciate that. And I want to be honest with you guys and tell you in full disclosure, this was gifted to me, and it's something that I was planning to get anyway, because I have a thing for leprechauns and, decks with mythical creatures in them. I have quite a few of them, and I'm going to show you a couple of those, and I'm going to do a walkthrough and a review of this. And I also want to show you this book. So let's take a look at the book first. It's called Tarot by the Moon. It's by Victoria Constantino. This was actually recommended to me a while back because I have a thing for the full moon. I don't have like an organized religious practice really, like I'm not, or spiritual practice I should say. I'm not a witch, or I don't have like an organized kind of spiritual thing, but I do have a full moon ritual that I do for a really long time. Usually I do it by myself. Sometimes we have a gathering of friends. We'll do a group of 5 or so of us will go around and do a tarot spread, do a meditation, and it's a lot of fun. And I think part of the reason for me is the full moon is very visual. And just to look at the moon itself is a very spiritual experience for me. And so that's why it's more important to me than, say, the new moon, which it was yesterday, I believe the new moon was. Because the new moon's not there in the sky. It's not this amazing visual presence. And also, I got to be honest with you, around the time of the full moon, I have an increase in dreams. And synchronicities and things like that seem to happen around the time of the full moon, and a lot. So it feels more kind of like a mystical time to me. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a Pisces, and that's why I'm into the full moon. I know some people are more into the new moon. But anyway, this book is really tailored to the full moon. It talks about all the moon phases and all, but each chapter in the book, okay, well, first of all, it's Tarot by the Moon by Victoria Constantino, in case I didn't tell you that. But each chapter is dedicated to a full moon. So, for instance, February, chapter 2 is the snow moon. It gives you a little bit about the moon itself, and then it gives like a whole bunch of tarot spreads in here, and some different articles. But really what's going to come in handy for me is the tarot spreads, because when I'm scrambling to put together this group, I'm always looking for a tarot deck, and a tarot spread rather, and these spreads are tailored to this specific moon. So she kind of does the work for you in a way, and it's just a really cool and very useful book. It's going to be useful for me, and like I said, it's kind of tailored to the full moon. So the ice moon, for instance, I mean, the ice moon is the whole cycle, but it works for me for the full moon, I should say, because it does talk a lot about the cycle, the waxing and waning phase and so forth. Now, the beginning of the book is very helpful as well, because it's kind of like an intermediate tarot book in a way. It's probably could be okay for beginners, but I think it would be good for somebody who has been studying tarot for a year or two and wants to add a few layers. So now you want to work with tarot and the moon. So you read about tarot and the moon, and really interesting stuff, that she's written down. And then you have just a very little bit of information. It's not like overkill. It's kind of like a little handbook even, interpreting the tarot. So symbolic correspondences. These are all Golden Dawn based, which is the most common. It's the system that I learned for correspondences, and it's just kind of cool. It works for me, Archangel Raphael, for instance. I mean, I don't know that Raphael, the archangel, corresponds with swords. I remember learning about that a long, long time ago, but that's something I've forgotten. And so you have all these, Michael is wands, and now you have a thing for cork hearts, a little numerology, which is always helpful, So it could definitely benefit a beginner, but also somebody who's maybe learned the Rider-Waite-Smith and now you're learning pip cards and you want to learn numerology and you need a basic kind of some idea of what the numbers mean. The part I really liked was tarot symbols and their meaning. So you have like Eggcorn, for instance. So if you see an Eggcorn in a tarot deck, and you see this here, it says success, planning, preparation, reserves, wealth. That's kind of cool, you know. If you think about an acorn and a squirrel, for instance, tucking away an acorn, I mean, that makes sense. The apple is knowledge. Same thing. You think of a teacher or the apple in the Garden of Eden, you know, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A bear means strength. Bell means news, weddings. So it's cool. And this is quite a few pages of this, you know. A dove is peace, feather. So, you know, and they're all very common sense kind of meanings. And that's always cool. If they ring true, you know, they ring true to me, and that's kind of cool. Because symbols, you know, don't have fixed meanings, obviously. You know, they mean whatever the culture you grew up in. You know, an olive branch might mean something different in your culture. It doesn't mean peace, you know. So it depends where you're from, of course, and what your background is. But for me, this works really well. Another part I really like too is the days of the week. Tells you all about that, which is something, you know, a lot of people I know follow the days of the week. You know, Rachel Pollack, I know, wears a different necklace every day of the week. She told me that's a way that she kind of gets in tune with, you know, her mystic side, you know, she gets in tune with nature and the moon cycle. But for me, it's the moon cycle. But I think like some people like the days of the week, you know, and if you tune your life to that, you know, it's a spiritual existence, you know, it's kind of cool. And it tells you all about each day. You know, Sunday's associated with the sun, it's masculine energy. You know, Monday's the moon, feminine. Tuesday's Mars. Wednesday's Mercury. Thursday's named after Thor. You know, Friday is Freya, the Roman god of Saturn, for Saturday. So pretty cool. And now you have influences and qualities of the moon phases. So, you know, new moon, waxing, first quarter, second quarter, full. This is a really easy to digest book as well. So it's kind of cool. What I really like too is the unique moon. So now, how often do you see, you know, a blue moon or a super moon? And you're like, well, what is that? You know, you hear that all the time, but like, you know, what exactly is a super moon? You know, you don't really know. It's funny, during a super moon, I always read what it is and then I forget. You know, so it's kind of cool to have a book. It's written down in a book. You know, but where I'm really going to get the use out of this is the spreads. You know, and the little tidbits of reading stuff. You know, shuffling and drawing tarot cards. I mean, that's of course pretty subjective stuff, but you know, you might appreciate reading it. But like I said, the spreads are tailored to each full moon. A bit about the power of intention. And you have a lot of spreads in there, I mean, for each moon. So every chapter is going to be dedicated to a different month and a full moon. So that's the first part. Now you have spells and rituals, which is not really my thing, but I'm not opposed to it. You know, I do one thing. I put out moon water at the full moon, and I actually put them in my... So most of you will know I make tarot cards, you know, and I make 17th and 18th century style tarot cards. Like, I follow a traditional method. You know, it's very kind of... you know, old style way of making them. What I do is I make a traditional wheat paste, and I'll mix the moon water in with the glue that I use to bind the paper, and it gives the tarot cards like a kind of a personal touch, but also for me, it's like a magical feel to it, you know, because there's like a piece of the moon in every card, and that's why my logo has a moon, you know, and now most of my cards don't look like this usually. I have the back, so I'm looking for some cards I might have around. No, I don't. Usually I have the traditional Dodal backs on here. I just happen to put my logo in there because these are my personal deck. It's my workhorse. I use them so often, and I really love it. But that's something I do. So I shouldn't say I don't do spells, but you know, that's something. But so I wouldn't be opposed to trying some of this stuff, and it's all really interesting. And using stuff around the house, cayenne, turmeric, thyme, you know. So, but it's just really cool. So here we have the February moon, this is the snow moon, more spreads, all types of articles and stuff in here. The significance of numbers, just cool. It's a really, really cool book. I really, really like it. Part about meditation in the back, the conclusion, and then you have a little notebook back here, which, a little note section. You can put notes and stuff in. This is going to come in handy. I really, really like this. I've gotten some other things for the moon in the past, and I'm just really happy about that. So we have Tarot at the End of the Rainbow. Now, this was a deck I saw in Llewelyn's catalog last year, and I was like, oh, wow, I have to wait a whole year for that to come out. I was excited because I was like, finally. I've always said I wish there was a leprechaun deck, because most Celtic decks kind of avoid leprechauns because they're pretty cliche. They've been Americanized. You know what I mean? Like they're just a bit cliche. You know what I mean? Stereotypical. But I still kind of want one because of how my upbringing was. I grew up in a very kind of a neighborhood where there was a lot of Irish culture because of all the immigrants that settled the area. My family's very Irish, but I also played football for an Irish parish, and we had a leprechaun on our jersey, and so I've grown up with this kind of iconography and stuff, and I just really love it. So there are a few other decks I have. I just want to show you very briefly, just to give you an idea of what I like. So, I have the Fantastical Creatures Tarot. This is Lisa Hunt. This is a really cool deck. It's very similar. It has cultures from all around the world, fairy tales and mythological beings. I've just been a sucker for these, all the time. And so it's that kind of deck, So this is one I have. That's Lisa Hunt. Another one I have, and I love Lisa Hunt, by the way. She's just really great. I'm looking forward to her releasing the Fairy Tale Tarot on Kickstarter. She's going to do that, and that's just brilliant. Another one is the Mythical Creatures Tarot by Baba Studios. One of my favorites. Beautiful, beautiful box and cards. Baba Studio quality is just cold stamping. It's beautiful. So I really, really like these. So I'm very into these kind of things. I have a lot of them. But there's one deck, and it's by... So this was like a $7 deck at the Halloween store. It's called Spirit of Halloween. But here it turns out that actually it's from a Russian artist named Vera Putrik, who goes by Samarame. And these are all mythological creatures, but they sell. The Halloween store must have purchased the art from her because they sell it at the Halloween store, but they don't credit her. They don't put her name or anything. I happened to find out because I saw this image online before, and I asked people in a group on Facebook where this card came from, and here it came from this deck. So I had researched Samarame a long time ago, and she has decks available on playing cards, But I was like, where can I find this deck? Because, I haven't seen any decks with leprechauns in them, and I really love leprechauns. I always did. And so, yeah, this is available, usually in October for like $7 or $8 in a Halloween store. After October, though, you can't find them. So, you can probably find it, and they're very inexpensive. I think Spencer's might carry them, too, if you're in the United States. A store called Spencer's. But anyway, so let's take a look at Tarot at the End of the Rainbow. Very low Scarabeo kind of packaging. The box is typical, and I don't mind the tuck box, because they're very easy to store. When you have a lot of decks, you're a deck collector, you read with different decks and whatever, I kind of prefer these because they don't take up a lot of space. It's nice to have a fancy box, but they don't store as easy, So let's take a look at the book, and then we're going to take a look at the cards. The book is actually not your typical Little White booklet. Usually I skip over this, but there's a couple paragraphs in the beginning about rainbows, how rainbows, they're universal symbols of cheer and wonder. The Celts believe there was a treasure at the end of the rainbow. The Norse, the Vikings believed that it was a bridge to the world of the gods, So, and then the meanings are really important because it actually talks about the character in the deck, and that's really why I want to show you that and pull it out, because it's going to be something you need to draw on. So this is obviously, looking at this, you're like, okay, it's a Rider deck. It's a Rider-Waite Smith kind of image. So that means if you're familiar with the Rider deck, you can read with it, and that's kind of why I like it. It's just kind of a themed Rider-Waite Smith, and it's just fun, and it'll probably be something I pull out in March, to be honest with you. So we have here the full distracted leprechaun walks to the edge of a cliff, his pack in hand. A rainbow lowers itself to the earth. The keywords are new start, freedom, whimsy, leap of faith. So, by the way, the backs are really, really pretty. They're green. They have this, bit of rainbow trinity thing on there, which I actually have earrings like that. I never know what that's called, though. I think I call it like a Celtic trinity symbol or something. Well, anyway. Okay, so here's the magician. The magician performs a ritual at his altar. Yeah, what I found interesting was the double lit candle. Not really sure what that means, other than that the candle is going to burn out pretty quick. But there's a rainbow in every card. So now you have the Celtic influence, but you also have the Norse. So now we have runes for Boaz and Jachin, but we also have B and J, which are the runes. I'm not really familiar with the runes so much, but if you're into runes, you might appreciate that. High Priestess stands between two trees, one black and white. She wears a mask over her eyes and holds an open book. And so here we have an Empress, and she's between a forest and a field. You have the grain, the wheatgrass behind her, which is present in the Rider-Waite Smith, and usually makes people think of Demeter, who is a goddess of springtime and wheat. Okay, this is a satyr, I believe it's called, right? Yeah. The master satyr sits on his throne. The orb he holds sends a rainbow out into the world. He seems very pleased with himself. Yeah, he's an emperor, It's kind of really cool, and I really like it. You have the Hierophant here with rainbow pants. It's really kind of fantasy, and I really like it. I mean, I like it's just a cheery deck, and I just enjoy that. Okay, so here we have two fairies kissing, and a cloud goddess blesses them. You have a leprechaun driving a chariot with two stags, black and white, dark horse, light horse. This one's cool. So you have the dire wolf, which is actually existed. Dire wolves were something that actually happened. They were, I think, 10,000 years ago. They were around, maybe even sooner than that. I'm not sure exactly when they became extinct, but they were huge. And to see a fairy next to a dire wolf, it's kind of like the contrast of large and small. So, that's cool. Strength. And we have the hermit. Now, this one's another thing that stood out to me, because you have a leprechaun, and he's sort of retreating into wherever with his lamp, but he has no shoes on. And there's a mythology about leprechauns that I read in my Celtic fairy tale book. Leprechauns were said to have been travelers. They traveled all over constantly. But the only time you were said to be able to catch a leprechaun is when they stopped to mend their shoes. They were shoemakers, and they always were mending their own shoes because they would get worn out because they traveled everywhere. And when they finally sat down to mend their shoes, that's when you can catch them and then demand 3 wishes or a pot of gold or whatever you want to get. But this leprechaun has no shoes, so does that mean he's not going anywhere? You know what I mean? Like, he's kind of staying put. And I'm not sure if that's what was intended, but that's what it says to me, So I'm just going to flip through the rest quickly. That's very Norse looking for the wheel. And justice. Interesting hangman with the leprechaun reaching for the pot of gold. Foot caught by the fairy. It's a centaur death character. Little fairy folk. What is this called again? I forget. Harpy. So Harpy on Temperance. We have a Tentacle Demon on the Devil card. Pretty traditional tower, you know. A tower getting struck by lightning. And we have the Mermaid on the Star, which is kind of cool. And a Kelpie. I believe this is called a Kelpie, which is on the Moon card. This is like a horse, like a seahorse, basically. This is a centaur and a unicorn mix hybrid on the Sun card. And now we have the 3 Spinners of Fate, spinning yarn for the harp, and the elf is playing the harp. You know, he's like playing, I forget how they worded it, but let me see here. An elf plays the strings forming the melody of fate to the owner of this instrument. And now we have the World Tree. Hovers between the 2 realms. The branch is full of renewed leaves. So, you know, pretty interesting. The pips are very pretty and very Rider-Waite-Smith. You know, you have the 2 of Cups. You have a mermaid and a fawn coming together. 3 fairies dancing in a field for the 3 of Cups with a rainbow. A little elf figure, you know, being offered a cup by the fairies. You know, very cool deck. You know, and fun. It's very lighthearted. You know, it's nothing serious. And sometimes that's what I want. You know, here's a cool 6 of Cups. And the 7. There's our leprechaun again, walking towards the rainbow. He's leaving. Nine of Cups. I'm not sure what this one is. Let's see. Is a goblin. That's a goblin. Crouches in a cavern full of gold. Yeah, goblins like gold. And a fairy girl. So we have a giant as the page, I believe, right? Yes, the giant is the page. Giant rests on a hillside, tending to his cows. The clasp on his coat reflects a rainbow within. So that's the Page of Cups, basically. And then we have our Knight of Cups is a fairy riding a frog. And a fairy queen. And I believe that is a dwarf king. Yeah, no, it's very kind of Lord of the Rings in a way, you know, and I really like that. So you can see very, very Rider. There's a 4 of coins, another leprechaun, a miser. I actually like this card a lot. This is one of the cards that I saw in the advertisements, and I was like, oh, it looks cool. Leprechauns are supposed to be like fair. They're half fairy, half evil. So this is the book I have now. Obviously, the story changes, but a leprechaun is a cross between an evil spirit and a degenerate fairy. That's what I heard. But they're not evil or good. They're kind of just, they're mischievous, kind of trickster characters. But they're not malevolent. And they're loners. They don't have families, you know. They have communities, but they're not like, you know, married and so forth. That's according to the book I read. I think the way it was pronounced differed from different places. You know, if you were from Cork, you know, you might have pronounced it one way, and from another area in Ireland, you might have pronounced leprechaun another way. So, you know, and the stories would obviously change. Very cute deck. Anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I would love to hear from you. You know, is this something you'd be into? You know, do you like it? What do you think of the book? And I appreciate you stopping by as always. And until next time, my friends, I might as well show you the rest of the deck. Love and peace, everybody. Oh, I'm kind of behind, though. My love and peace was too soon. Oh. Okay. Thanks again, man. Love and peace. Bye-bye.